Want to find your seat for the event of your choice but can't get one that fits your desire or your budget? Well, my friends, SeatGeek has you covered. SeatGeek is the official sponsor of the Snake Sports Talk Show. With a list of over hundreds of events to choose from, SeatGeek will assure you that you won't miss your seat with the amazing view of your choice at the most affordable price. Whether it's looking for your best seat in the house of your favorite sports team, finding live concerts to get you closer to your favorite artist, or enjoying your spot at your favorite live shows, comedies, and more, SeatGeek has it all just for you. Go online to SeatGeek.com or download the app on your mobile device through Google Play and the App Store. And as a special offer before checkout, use promo code SNAKESPORTS and save yourself $20 off of your purchase of your first ticket and experience why SeatGeek is the most trusted ticketing app for your next event. Remember, that's SeatGeek.com and download the app on your phone with promo code SNAKESPORTS for $20 off and find your seat with SeatGeek.
And now, broadcasting live from Las Vegas, the Snake Sports Talk Show with Jake Silva starts now.
Oh, here we go, ladies and gentlemen. We finally made it to a fantastic Friday for all of you live in Denver. This is the Snake Sports Talk Show, wherever and however you may be watching and listening. Thanks for making us a part of your lovely evening. What a week that we have had. We got stacks upon stacks upon stacks of all-star lineups, and it's only getting better from here. I got Mo Murphy of Believe in Mavs, and I've got Trevor Beggs, Locked On Canucks, basketball, hockey. The playoffs have just been amazing. Wherever and however you may be watching, Roku, iHeartRadio, and all social media platforms known to man, you got it. We are live on all those platforms, and wherever you can find your podcast, like, subscribe, hit the bell button, keep you up to date on future and past episodes. We're going to jump right up on into it because the finals is now set. Boston Celtics, Dallas Mavericks. We got a huge discussion to make up on this one, and more in particular for the Dallas Mavericks. And I'm excited for this series because there's going to be a lot of physicality. There's going to be a lot of just offensive shots, but it's mostly going to be who's got the upper hand at the end of this series. So joining me, he's believing in those Mavericks, knows all about it in Dallas. Let's bring him on, Mo Murphy. Well, Mo, here we go. We got Dallas and we got Boston. I will say this because the Mavericks have always been such an interesting organization to start with. We'll start there because, the last time the championship in 2011, it was just surreal. The fact that they beat a loaded Miami roster to come all the way to this point with Luka, with Kyrie, with Jason Kidd and PJ Washington and you name it. How's this got to feel right now for Mavericks fans all over? Because, this is something else. I love what this roster's done. I think they've clicked at the right time. How have you evaluated covering this team as long as you have?
It's definitely special. The Mavericks being in the NBA Finals. Last time they've been was 2011. So what is that? 13 years. It's been 13 years since the last championship appearance. Texas Rangers, just won the World Series last season. So they're the defending champs. So like the vibes are high in Dallas. I mean, at this point, Mavericks playing for a NBA championship. The only thing that you could do better in the Dallas area is like the Stars win the Stanley Cup and somehow, some way, the Cowboys finally reach the Super Bowl. We know that's not going to happen. So for now, they might have 3 teams that can hoist up a championship trophy within a calendar year. Like that's the vibes. That's what people are thinking about. I mean, the Dallas Stars play tonight. Like the Dallas Stars are about to play right now. So the possibility of like in a calendar year, 3 of your 4 major market sports teams winning a championship is something that like you can feel it in the air in Dallas and the Fort Worth area and surrounding areas. Everybody feel it. Everybody wearing their Mavericks gear everywhere. I mean, the gym, the park, the basketball court, in Walmart, it doesn't matter. Like Mavs gear is out everywhere in all surrounding areas. So like you could definitely tell it's a different feeling.
Well, and especially too, I mean, you've also got the Arlington Renegades as well that they've been playing, very well in the UFL. And so like there's so much happening all around in the Dallas, the Fort Worth, the Arlington area. Like, I mean, Texas is known to go big and go home. So the thing about the Mavericks, what is so I just find very fascinating and intriguing is because the fact that, first of all, following this team for as long as you have, and even from when watching basketball myself, I mean, you come from an era where Dirk Nowitzki gave everything he could to this organization. And then, of course, the billionaire Mark Cuban, he's known for, we got to make a deal, And so now you're at this point, Luka Doncic. And we know with this was going to be now the next pillar moving forward. And I mean, like, how have you basically seen this all kind of wrap with Luka? Because I think a lot of the question is will he ever win a championship? Will he get over that hump? Because at this point, he's represented in the final before Trae Young, before Zion, before a lot of these youngsters. I mean, how have you really evaluated Luka Doncic to this point where now he's drinking this whole moment in?
I think now Luka's where he's supposed to be. Like, he's only been in the league, 6 years, if I'm not mistaken. Like, this is the end of his 6th year. LeBron didn't win his first championship till like year 7. Michael Jordan didn't win his first championship till like year 7. A lot of the all-time greats, like, not everybody walked in the league and won a championship as a rookie like Magic Johnson. Like, not everybody won one early, and some of the players that won early never won again. So, like, when you get a superstar talent like Luka, you draft him. Well, you trade for him on draft day. You get him. You got to build around him. The kid walks into the league at 18, 19 years old. So you got to develop him. You got to allow him to become into his own. The thing is, Luka hit the ground running. Luka was pretty much, you saw after his rookie year, like he was one of those, like after his rookie year, he's been first team all NBA every year since then. So like he's hit the ground running. This dude has a Hall of Fame resume before he's even won or competed for a championship. He is now with a Hall of Fame resume about to compete for a championship and possibly win one. But these things take time. But the ring culture conversation has like, we've rushed the process, and like they almost treat professional sports like we demand from college athletes. Like, you got 3 years to get this thing right, or 4 years at the max. Maybe if you're a 5th year senior, like you got 5 years to win the championship, or else your window's closed and you'll no longer play the sport. And it's like people are almost treating that professional sports the same way. And like Luka's probably going to play 15, 17, 18 years. But because he hasn't played for a championship yet, he hadn't reached the finals until yet. It's like, oh man, when is this dude gonna win one? Like some of the all-time greats, it takes time. These things take time. He hits his stride. You build the perfect team around him. You find the right coach. Getting Kyrie in the middle of the season doesn't mean it doesn't turn you into a championship contender. You found that out last year. So now Kyrie, they had a whole season and a half now, a whole year and a half to mesh. They've created a relationship. This is like a family environment now. You could tell they love each other. They're brothers. You add Gafford. So it's a process to build an organization to try and win a championship. It doesn't happen overnight, but the millions of sports fans don't understand that. They see Luka's first team all NBA. After that 2nd year, people thought he was ready to win a championship. And even if he was, it's not that easy. And only one team wins a championship, but because of the ring culture conversation, that they wanted the process of where Luka is fine right now. He is about to enter his prime. He is now about to enter the best years of his career for the next 5 to 7 years. This is going to be his Hall of Fame stretch. His first 5 years already are Hall of Fame worthy, but this is going to be his all-time great stretch over the next 5 to 7 years. So I say give it time. He's competing for a championship now. If the Dallas Mavericks win, he has one under his belt. But of course, the pressure is going to be like, can he win 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7? And it's like, just take it 1 year at a time. Like, allow Luka to play in the finals and have a finals appearance. This is a Boston Celtics team that's been there before. So it's like, that part frustrates me. It gets, and it's not just about Luka. They do it to all the young stars. Like Anthony Edwards about to get that same treatment after being in the Western Conference Finals this year. Anything short of a finals appearance is going to be a failure, and they're going to start talking about when is it time for him to win the championship. So they do this to every young star that comes in and is all NBA in his first 2 or 3 years.
Love it, man. And and like I said, when Luka hit the ground running, I think what's so fascinating to me was the fact that he got the experience as he did in Latvia at 15 years old, where you're facing against guys that were in their mid-30s, if not in their 40s, and you're building that now. And we'll get to that on the tail end, but it's just like most of these players, international and domestic, they're built differently because it's like they have a different set of like just their type of discipline, and at the same time how they really tack that on. Most of our domestic stars, we know, you go through high school, you go through a collegiate program, and you go through potentially tournament after tournament. Then you get into the NBA, and I know it's mixed with, swag, it's mixed with a culture, it's mixed with a lot of those things. But then you bring this energy and vibe. And I used to love that. When we were in the eras of the 90s, 2000s, there was always 2 stars. It wasn't just one in particular, even though we praised a lot for them. But there were always that 2 that just set the culture. So to this discussion, going off of, and unfortunately now Rick Carlisle, he's packing his bags, he's out, and coached this team in the past. Now is Jason Kidd. What I love about this is because Kidd was in this particular situation with Dallas. I feel like this is so much of just like a deja vu for him because of the fact he won the title with this team. Now he's about to potentially try to win a title coaching this team. What has been your thoughts with Jason Kidd on this point?
Right at this point, I love Jason Kidd. Like, and I don't kill coaches. Like I'm gonna put that like so. But there was a point in time, like even throughout the season, it's like, man, is there a slight upgrade over Jason Kidd? Like he's good, but I think we need a little bit better to get over the hump and take Luka Doncic to be able to win the championship. He shut everybody up. Kyrie Irving, like all those guys. So Jason Kidd, though, you know what? And you said something you said is very familiar. He experienced this as a player. He played with Dirk when they won, what you pointed out. But think about it. We were killing Dirk. Dirk had already been to a finals, hadn't won a championship yet. Dirk was one of the greatest power forwards we had ever seen. His career seemed like it was starting to come to a wind down, and he was going to be one of those players that was not going to, be able to win a championship during his NBA career. And then he gets to the finals again in 2011, and it seemed like the treatment was, this is the Heatles. That's who you're playing, the big 3, not 1, not 2, not 3. So, like, you don't give them a chance. But then at the same time, you're telling Dirk, like, man, if he doesn't win this, like, this could affect his legacy. He's not going to have a championship. He's going to be 0-2 in finals appearances, losing to, like, the Miami Heat both times. Dwayne Wade in 2006, and then Dwayne Wade, LeBron, Chris Bosh, and company in 2011 had they lost. Like, so the narrative would have been, like, he could get there. He's an all-time great, but he can't win the whole thing. And so Jason Kidd played on that team and understood what it was. And when they got there and won the championship, like, I think it's the same type of vibe, same type of environment, same type of atmosphere and feeling. Just Jason Kidd is now at the throne of the head coach position as opposed to being the point guard.
Yeah, and it is interesting. And again, I love it when you got former players that become coaches. And sometimes it either works one of 2 ways. They do pan out or they don't. But usually a lot of times, like in this particular instance, Jason Kidd was the point. He was the guy that basically controlled, started things up, and began to basically form that kind of offense. You started to open up spots in the perimeter. You started to open up spots in the wings. So you started to really expand and then go in for that attack. That was what it was, preparation from the start. So I just think, and I know it's going to be meaningful for Jason Kidd as a coach, for Luka Doncic being the star player, the next guy over that dirt past the torch in Dallas, and now he's the star. I feel like not a lot of people are talking about it, but we know it in the back of our minds. Kyrie Irving. Kyrie won a title with LeBron. And so at this point, Kyrie played with Boston. Things did not work out at that point because then Boston, in comes Jason Tatum, in comes Jaylen Brown. They find their future stars. And initially said, Kyrie, we like you, but you're not needed in this organization anymore. So goes Kyrie to Brooklyn, then travels a lot. He became the traveler. I feel like there's something that is so meaningful about Kyrie because he's already won a title. He's had a lot of this experience, but the narrative is, and like for most players, is like, well, you can't win a championship without LeBron. Well, here we are with Kyrie, with Luka. What in watching with what Kyrie has done, I felt like we know the whole personal narrative. We know a lot of the adversities he's had to overcome, but I felt like as maturity grows, as we start to grow as a player and as a person, I think Kyrie has finally hit to where he is meant for this moment. Is it right for me to say that I feel like this is the moment Kyrie is about to just backlash this on a lot of teams, from Boston, from the league, and even from LeBron? Your thoughts?
I don't think the LeBron aspect matters so much. Like, I know when Kyrie won with LeBron, it wasn't that he hated LeBron. He didn't but he felt like everything was so Bron-centric, even from like a standpoint like that he didn't get the credit he deserved. And he's like, he rightfully so, he hit the shot of all shots. Like, that is a historic shot that's going to be shown for generations upon generations. That shot is going to pop back up in the finals commercial coming up in a week like that. So that's how important he was, and he wasn't feeling the importance. And so he wanted to do it on his own. He was young. And so I'm about to enter my prime. I think I could carry a team. Come to find out, it's a lot harder. It's a bigger burden. And that's okay. Like, you think you can do something, you don't ultimately succeed. That's fine. But because it was Kyrie Irving and he left what people consider was such a great position, being alongside, being Robin to LeBron's Batman, and people made it like it was a personal thing. And those dudes have had love for each other all the time. But even now, like, yes, I think, and I know Kyrie does not want to talk about it. He hasn't talked about it much. He didn't talk about it much last night. And every reporter was like, we know you don't want to talk about it, but we wouldn't be doing our job if we don't ask. And we will accept whatever answer you give us, but we have to do our job. Our bosses have to know that we tried to talk about what it means to go back to Boston and play against the Boston Celtics and ultimately have an opportunity to win a championship. And I think, like, Kyrie will be able to kill a lot of noise, but one thing you said was maturity. And so we go through life, but we hold athletes to different standards. So Kyrie's what, like 31, 32, yep. 31? Mm-hmm. So Kyrie probably, like, men just figure it out. Like, in our 30s is when we start to thrive, because it took us our whole 20s to figure it out. So our 30s and on is where we really start to thrive, and they're dead in the middle of our careers and doing absolutely amazing, and new cars and brand new houses and all that stuff. 35, 36. But like, when you're an athlete, if you don't have it figured out by 23, 24, 25, you might not be in the league. Like, that's how people treat it. There might not be a place for you. And so it took Kyrie some time to mature, find the right situation. He found the right situation, and you see it. And so from a basketball, a life standpoint, and I love Kyrie. Like, I think Kyrie's a good dude, whatever. Like, you can agree or disagree with any man's personal opinions. That's your personal opinion, not mine. So it doesn't matter. But I like Kyrie. I think he's a good dude. And so now he's at the full. I think this is just the best version of Kyrie Irving, period. Like, in life. I think this is the best. I think he feels this is the best of him mentally, physically, and then the basketball player. Kyrie is a jack of all trades. You need him to play defense, he'll do that. You want him to go score 30, he'll do that. You want him to give you 10 assists, 15 points, and guard your best guard on defense, he'll do that. Like, he's willing to do whatever it takes to win games, and that's maturity. That's called being a leader. That's also called, like, it's self-reflection. He's had plenty of self-reflection, and now he's in a situation where he's happy. Everything's better when you're winning games on top of that, and now he's competing for a championship. So, I mean, this could be essentially a big FU to everybody that had everything to say about Kyrie since he left. And I think, if they win the championship, like I think you'll catch a little bit of that. He won't flat out say it, but you'll catch the vibes, the attitude, the demeanor, the way he carry himself. It's a little bit, I told y'all, like, yeah, y'all had a lot to say over a couple years, and that's cool. But I'm back. I'm here. I won a championship, and y'all going to have to deal with me next year as the defending champ alongside Luka Doncic and this Dallas Mavericks team. So, yeah, I do think it means something to Kyrie to beat Boston. Like, not just get his second championship and without LeBron and post all the turmoil or whatever happened in his life, but also the fact that it'd be like, it's against the Celtics. Like, I beat the true team that was the downfall of the couple years for Kyrie Irving. It seemed like it started in Boston. So, yeah, I think it'd be even more special. Like, you value things. Winning a championship is absolutely amazing, but it's got to be even better to beat your former team. That
absolutely.
The crowd hates you too.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, then that's the thing is because, I mean, you name it. I mean, from the COVID protocols, from, just the relationship he had with Kevin Durant, which was just odd, and it didn't work out in the end for Brooklyn. And like, they blew this thing up. But then eventually, I mean, I was just so curious when the time, and I'll be honest, and I'm taking this back. I initially said, because we've all watched Shark Tank, right? We've all watched Mark Cuban when he comes to making deals and all the rest of it. I was flat out saying, I'm like, Mark, I think this is the worst financial decision I think you've ever made. Now I feel like an idiot. And I feel like
you're not by yourself. So like, don't think like, oh, it's just Jake the Snake and don't listen to Snake Sports Talk Show no more. Like, you're not by yourself, bro. You're not.
That's right. And that's the one thing is because in the end, like I love it when players prove me wrong, because in the end, it's like they prove something to me that I should have seen this inside looking out. And then in the end, it all made sense in the end. So the road now to the final. So Dallas came in a very interesting road because you look at the matchups they had to play. They had to play the Clippers. But the thing about that is, I mean, Kawhi's availability, we all know that. Exactly. But to face against Paul George, who we know was a great shooter, a great defender of the wing, but it was like the Clippers, they fooled me. They were fool's gold from the end of it because I thought things were clicking, things were working well, and then all of a sudden it just didn't work. Then they go to OKC, facing a young team, Chet Holmgren and SGA. I felt like because of how young that team was, they were not quite there yet, but they got the taste. Mm-hmm. And then all the way to the point where you face Minnesota. I felt like a lot of that energy was used up in the series against Dallas, but we can admit, and Edwards is just different. If they could just make it happen, where it's a preview of, it's not great, it's getting better, it eventually will start to thrive. I felt like Dallas's road to the final is something that is completely different from Boston because they've dealt with physicality, they dealt with veterans and young up-and-coming rising stars and rookies, and then in the end, it all meshed together to where Luka didn't have to be the guy to have the ball in his hands to take control. I got Kyrie shooting. I've got PJ Washington. I got Gafford. I now am trusting my team. When looking at this road, it's safe to say this is not an easy road if you're looking at an Eastern Conference team where there's not a whole lot I'm getting from it. But in the West, I got everything. What did you think of this with them now in the final, what they had to go through this road?
Yeah, I think no matter who was coming out of the West, I think we knew it was going to be a little more respectable. They were going to have the tough road. There wasn't a single, team in the West in the playoffs that you thought had an easy road. Like, okay, Denver had to come out and play the Lakers, and then they go on and they end up playing Minnesota. Like, that's your second round. Like, you get gifted for a first round being the 2 seed. You have to play LeBron and Anthony Davis and the Lakers. They were able to handle business, but still, then you have to go on. Okay, we beat them, and then we go on to have to play Karl Anthony Towns, Anthony Edwards, Rudy Gobert, and the Minnesota Timberwolves. And then had they have won, they would have had to play Dallas Mavericks. So, like, there was no easy road. Phoenix, Clippers, it doesn't matter. Wherever you won from, your next matchup was probably going to be a little tougher than previous, and it was going to just keep getting tougher. Like you said, the East was kind of a cakewalk. A lot of injured stars over there that Boston was able to avoid. Not their fault, though, but it's not Boston's fault. Boston can't help that Jimmy Butler wasn't healthy, can't help that Tyrese Halliburton ended up getting hurt. They can't help that Donovan Mitchell got hurt. Like, that's not none of their fault. But it's still, for context, they haven't had a road. So you would say, like, well, Boston's probably more, they're probably more fresh, more healthy. Dallas a little bit beat up, but Dallas gets a week off anyway. So now, even through all that, they get a week to freshen up and get ready for a vigorous, probably 6 or 7 game series of just, they're going to have to battle it out. But this road, they beat 3 of the top 4 seeds in the West in order to get there. They were the 5 seed. They had to beat 3 of the 4 seeds ahead of them. And people are like, I still don't know. They want to question it. Now, all of a sudden, because Dallas 1-5 and blew Minnesota out, now all of a sudden Minnesota's not as good as we thought, even though they beat Denver and the reigning champs, and we thought that was a tall task. So, like, they're still going to try and diminish it because this isn't who everybody predicted to reach the NBA Finals. Now, if it was Anthony Edwards or the Denver Nuggets, everybody's safe bets would have been in place, so they would have praised it up of how right I was. And I picked Denver and look who they had to go through, but nobody picked Dallas. So nobody wants to give Dallas 100% the credit that they would have gave Denver or Anthony Edwards had Anthony Edwards beat Luka Doncic, Kyrie, and Dallas. So the road was tough. Like, yeah, will you beat OKC if they were 2 years older and 2 more years together? Maybe not. But maybe so. Like, you don't know that. That's not them being young. SGA and Luka are the same age. Like, we talk about how young they are and how young their superstar is, but SGA is actually 8 months older than Luka. So, like, they're the same age, but like we talked about before, Luka hit the ground running. We think this dude has been in the league 10, 12 years. People act like Luka's 30. So the road was as tough as you could imagine. I guess the only way it would have got tougher is if they would have played Denver instead of Minnesota. But other than that, it's as tough as it would have got in the West. And so they were able to do so. And you could say, well, Kawhi wasn't hurt or Kawhi wasn't available. He was never going to be available.
Yeah.
I could have told you 3 years ago he wouldn't have been available for this. Like, I tell everybody, I'm taking the Clippers. They'll finally be healthy. They will never be healthy. Paul George and Kawhi Leonard will walk into the playoffs with ailments. One of them will get hurt in the playoffs. I tried telling people that, and, like, they didn't want to hear it, so Kawhi goes down. That doesn't discredit. It was expected. We all saw it. Like you said, like, people sold stock on. I sold stock on the Clippers after the first year when they didn't win. I'm like, I'm not buying into it. They're always hurt. And every year they might do it. They're my team to come out the West. They're injured, but people use that against the Mavericks. But like I said, you beat 3 of the 4 seed. You beat 3 of the top 4 seeds in the Western Conference to get there. So the road doesn't get much harder unless you would have beat 1, 2, and 3. You not playing Denver avoided you having to beat 1, 2, and 3, and that would have been the toughest road any team would have had to take to reach the finals.
And it's very true. And, and the thing about it is, and what differs, and especially when we get to this last point is that the West just have so much competition in front of them because they got literally everything. And every team is going to get tested. How tough are you? Can you shoot, especially with being contested, getting boxed out, or especially when you're in a position where I need a pass, I need a rebound, I need a shot from either the wing or the perimeter or anywhere on that arc. I need a shot to get us in this and then control the possession in time, but not allow the opposing team to score. I feel like it didn't matter. Dallas, Minnesota, Denver, those were my 3 top physical teams that I think would have been more than capable of being a title contender. Mm-hmm. Minnesota, I think they're getting closer. They're getting better. We saw a preview, but in the end, we know with what these players are. And Denver, they're going to be a problem for the next 5 years. We know that for a fact. And then in comes Dallas. They're also another team we could never figure out until we get to this point of, oh, this is what they are. So now the time is at hand, the final. So Boston against Dallas. I will tell you, my key points about this finals and to getting your opinion on this last segment is I don't think Boston's prepared for this. And I'll be very bluntly honest because everybody, and I've been hearing it all day, I've been hearing a lot of Tatum defenders. I don't hate Tatum. I don't. But I get very critical when I'm getting an all-in or an all-out. I got to have a consistent rate where if you gave me the same amount of rebounds, maybe a little bit more, if not 2-3 points more per game that you're getting because you're keeping your foot on the gas pedal. But I think my prediction of this, if you're Boston, I got to finish this quick. I got to make this a 5-6 game series because you get that thing to 7, you're toast. Because Kyrie, 14-0 in crucial, clutch, winning moments. You do not want to have that if you're facing them in a 7-game series and it goes all the way to 7. But I think Dallas, they outmatch them physically. I think they outmatch them when it comes to when I need a bucket or I need a rebound or I need a stop. I think Dallas checks all the boxes from the size and even from contesting the bench. When previewing the finals, how do you really see this go down? Because I think Boston needs to finish this thing quick, but if you're Dallas, I'm not making this thing easy enough for the Celtics moving forward.
Yeah, the longer this series goes, the worse it gets for Boston, obviously. I'm going to tell you, it's a tall task for both teams. Like, it's not easy for Dallas. Like, this is not an easy matchup. This isn't. If Dallas won in 5 or swept Boston, I would be absolutely surprised. I'm going to tell you that now. Like, this isn't a 4 or 5 game series. I don't think either way. If you want me to be honest, man, this is my 2 versus your 2. This is Luka and Kyrie versus Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Who's going to step up, show up, and win the championship? Like, Tatum and Brown have been here. Kyrie's looking for a second championship. This is Luka's first shot at getting a championship, legitimate shot by being in the finals and competing for a championship. But I like Dallas's 2 versus their 2. And in these moments, role players don't matter as much. They need to do their job and not mess this up. But this isn't on Drew Holiday or Derek White or Al Horford or Daniel Gafford or Derek Lively or Derek Jones Jr., any of them. This is on Luka and Kyrie and Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. And right now, I want Luka and Kyrie over Tatum and Brown. I think my 2 can show up and show out in the 7-game series more often than your 2. And the advantage that I think Dallas has, it's not hanging over their head. Luka's never came up short in the finals. He's never played in the finals. Luka didn't lose in the finals a series that he should have won. Luka didn't choke away a lead. Luka didn't look like he was about to win a championship. Boston did. Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown did, and now they're back for redemption. But with redemption, people never forget. So that means there's also pressure, and I think there's more pressure on Boston than there is Dallas. I don't think Dallas has felt pressure yet. I don't think they feel the pressure. They're not playing with the pressure, and the farther they get, the less chance everybody tells you Dallas has. So they just get to play ball, have fun, and like, oh, you don't expect nothing else anyway, so watch this. I think that matters. And so for that, I'm taking Dallas. I got the Mavericks in 6. I agree with you, though. If it does go 7, I still would take Dallas in 7. Like, I would take them to win game 7 because Kyrie, what would he want anything more than to win a game 7 in the Garden in Boston? Like, what better than to celebrate a championship in a game 7 in Boston? But I think the safest thing to do when you're talking about NBA Finals, 2 teams that really deserve, have earned their way here, and you could see win a championship, you got to close them out when you have an opportunity at home, when home games are, you got 3, they got 4. So if it's game 6 and you're up 3-2, you need to go ahead and close it out, win the championship, and just keep everything, all media, everybody in place in Dallas for the next week, all the way up, leading through the parade by winning it in 6. And so I think that's what Dallas is going to do. I think they're going to be up 3-2. They're going to walk into game 6, and I think they're going to understand we can't let this thing leave out of Dallas. We don't want to. We don't want to take that chance. We're not going to let it leave out of Dallas. All of y'all might as well get comfortable, extend your stays in the hotels, the media members and everything, because y'all about to cover us for the next week until this parade cracks. But yeah, I'm taking Dallas in 6.
Yeah, I love it, man. You got me hyped up on this NBA Finals preview, man. And like I said, at least they get a week off. So at least these guys are going to be well rested. They'll be focused. They'll be ready to roll. But man, I'm just loving with how Dallas just put all this stuff together. I mean, from the time that they end up acquiring PJ Washington and they get all these pieces and then all these up and coming guys that are starting to show up. I mean, my final thought and while now we're here in the finals, but looking back at the NBA playoffs, I mean, we got mixtures of everything, but I think a lot of the identities were so clear. You could not miss this. You need to get Jalen Brunson a star. You do. Because if he's showing out night in, night out, give him a Robin for him to be able to conserve that energy, not be very quick to be injury prone, but the Knicks are at the very least in the right track. But then you get, Minnesota, that Anthony Edwards, I think he is primed to be the face of this league for domestic stars because we need that. I mean, I'm watching international players overtake this game from Luka to Jokic to Wemby and Giannis. Like, I'm not getting enough of these domestic stars that I know that want to get over the top. So when you look back at the playoffs, are there things that really stand out to you that you potentially preview of what next season may look like and how this honestly, I mean, I'm not saying this was bad, but I think this is much more needed improvement to make the league and yet make the playoffs much more entertaining for the future.
Yeah, so in the playoffs this year, the main thing I want to say is, man, y'all might need to prepare for some finals games in New York next year. I think the Knicks will be there. Kind of, I guess, a wild guess, but everybody's like the star. They need a star. They were missing half their team, and I think that Robin to Jalen Brunson's Batman is Julius Randle. I really do. I don't think the Knicks need to touch this roster much. Like, just make sure everybody's healthy. Bring back the pieces. Get OG back. Make sure Randall's back healthy. Hartenstein, Mitchell Robinson. I like this team. I felt like New York would have had a chance, minus all those guys, to beat Boston, or at least upset them, beat them in game one in the Eastern Conference Finals, have them shaking in their boots because of how physical they are. So I think, New York City might have a couple finals games. I think I feel safe in saying that next year. I wouldn't be surprised. I'll say that. Anthony Edwards, he does seem to be the guy, the domestic superstar you're talking about to try and be the face of the league. I do think we learned that, and then him reaching the Western Conference Finals makes it a lot easier. And I guess what you could learn is the one that we're not giving the benefit of the doubt that could be the face of the league domestically if he wins a championship is Jason Tatum. Like, I think that's what I'm waiting to see is like, okay, if Dallas does lose and Boston wins this championship, like, what is the final, like, what is the overall thought on Jason Tatum? Because he would be probably the best player he probably wins finals MVP. It could be Jaylen Brown, but I think since he won conference finals MVP, I think Tatum should be the best player on their team in this series if they want to have an opportunity to win. And so he gets his championship. He gets his finals MVP. He plays for the Boston Celtics. They're defending champs. He's a domestic star. It's easy when you win a championship and you are in Boston. The brand sells itself. So I am interested to see, like, if Boston wins, does that change who people think could be the face of the league? And do we move from like, hey, let's hold off on Anthony Edwards for a second and at least give Jason Tatum a 2 to 3 year run of being promoted as the face of the league and see what he does with it? That'll give you time. Anthony Edwards will be 25. If Celtics win, Anthony Edwards will be 25 if Tatum fails to hold the torch as face of the league after winning a championship this year, if they're able to win it. So that's one of the main things I want to see is how are we treating Jason Tatum if they win? Like, because we're talking about Anthony Edwards being the face of the league, and then we got Wemby coming up. Like, Luka, if he wins it, probably is the face of the league. You still got Jokic and Giannis and all these guys. Like, how do we value Tatum overall as our domestic superstar and being the guy to be like, this is representing the American-born players, and it's not all about the European guys coming over here, taking over, winning our MVPs and winning our championships. Like, so I think Jason Tatum could take that torch if they win it. That's something that I think I've been kind of I've been waiting for him to grasp it throughout the playoffs, take a chokehold on it and say, yeah, Tatum will be the face of the league if he wins a championship. I still don't think he's fully done that, but he has another opportunity in the series where the whole world's going to be watching to be able to do it. And I think you'll value Tatum a little differently.
Yeah, this will be really interesting in the end of the day because, I mean, like, again, I loved watching college hoops for so long, but I just feel like Adam Silver and the entirety of the league, they need to get on the same page, because in the end, I know the NIL deals, I know, like, a lot of this stuff, but listen, and I've always been mentioning this because every time it's always the root of one person, John Calipari. This one and done deal don't work. You got to build these guys to where they are ready and they're prepared. So that's my hope of it. I think if you could do that and you get these players, because every time a player comes in, I don't know about them until 4 or 5 years in the league. I don't even know about them until then. And so I feel like the development's got to be different. So if I could get that, I think the league will be in much, much better hands, because the NFL, I'm getting content every day. I'm getting all these other, stars that are ready to roll, like now, even when like they come out of the draft. So hopefully it'll be an interesting, discussion in the end, but hopefully they do make that right. But Mo, appreciate you, dude. You got me fired up for this finals, preview, man. But where can everybody find all your content, and especially getting geared up, because things are about to get bigger in Texas?
Yeah, make sure you follow me at Mo_Cheese15 on Twitter, at Up in Flames Pod on Instagram, and make sure you check out Believe in Mavs anywhere you get your podcast. Apple, Spotify, YouTube. That's BLEAV in Mavs. Yeah, that's about it. Just make sure, because I got a bunch of Mavs content creators lined up all week leading up to the finals. Who knows after each game what that's going to bring as well on Believe in Mavs. But like this week going to be loaded. I think really starting Sunday. Like it's like everybody enjoy your weekend and get with me on Sunday. But Sunday to Thursday, it's going to be a show every day with a different guest of another Mavs content creator, trying to reach out to a couple Boston Celtics guys to talk to. So this going to be a loaded week. I'm going to be pretty busy. So make sure you check out, tune in, and give me a follow, man. I appreciate you for having me on. I always love being a guest, and I always, I'm going to get you on, whether it's Believe in Mavs or Up in Flames Pod. I got to get you on. I always love to show love back to people who show love to me. So I do appreciate you, Jake.
Absolutely, man. Appreciate you, man. And like I said, busy week, man, and rightfully so, man. And get geared up, get ready for it, because Mavs fans and even just basketball fans up in general, they are not ready for what is about to come by the time tip-off starts up in game one. Appreciate you, Mo. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we shall see next week how this will turn out. Take care, man.
Thank you. You too.
Absolutely. Man, NBA playoffs have been fantastic, and the NHL Stanley Cup playoffs have been even more amazing. And so joining me on, and a team that really exceeded a lot of expectations this year, a Pacific title, and then getting it into the second round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. But you know what? They got a bright future ahead of them. I'm excited to see exactly, because not only is it just in Vancouver, but for the entire region of Canada is all up on the line. And we know Edmonton, they got a chance to do it, but I'm excited about the future of this team. Trevor Beggs, Locked on Canucks, coming up here on the show. So I got to say, man, what a year it has been for the Vancouver Canucks, and it had been a long time rolling. And I just feel like this group, from top to bottom, I mean, you name it, Brock Besser to Elias Pettersson and Quinn Hughes, this was bound for it to eventually click. And they really have achieved they got a Pacific title, and now like they've gone into the second round. But there are some exciting things from it. Reviewing and recapping, how did you think about this season for the Canucks?
Jake the Snake, buddy, it's a pleasure to be on with you, man. And, for this season with the Vancouver Canucks, it's about damn time, okay? It's about damn time this team had some success, okay? I've talked about it before, but this is probably the most cursed franchise in the NHL. Even more so cursed than the Toronto Maple Leafs. I mean, we're talking 54 years, no Stanley Cup. Look, me and Kyle, my co-host of Locked On Canucks, are crying because the Florida Panthers are 1 win away from the Stanley Cup Finals. How can the Florida Panthers, go to 3 finals at the same amount that the Canucks have been to in their entire 54-year history? It's crazy, man. But anyways, this season, again, it definitely exceeded my expectations. I think, if it didn't exceed everyone's expectations, I think, anyone who thinks that is crazy. The Vancouver Canucks, I did see them as a playoff team. I saw them as a wild card team. I thought, LA, Vegas, and Edmonton were clearly the 3 best teams in the West. And Jim Rutherford, our president, had a quote at the beginning of the season. He said, if everything goes right, the Canucks are a playoff team. Well, pretty much everything did go right, and the Canucks were one of the best teams in the NHL. And you mentioned the big names, right? Brock Besser. We were trying to trade this guy out of town for the most part a year ago, right? I was in the locker room when he was going to be healthy scratched, and he ended up going in last minute because the guy was sick. He's come a long, long ways, and the guy's been through so much. Quinn Hughes, I mean, I think he's finally getting some respect. I don't know, the East Coast of North America. I don't know how much they know about this guy. They probably just thought he was a slick offensive defenseman, but man, oh man, is he such a good all-around defenseman, and deservedly the best defenseman in the league this season. And Elias Pettersson, you know what? He tailed off a bit, but 89 points, one of the top scorers in the NHL. And I think this postseason was a good learning lesson for him. I think he's going to be better in the years to come in the playoffs. And we haven't even mentioned probably the best guy on the Canucks this season. Quinn Hughes might have something to say about that, but JT Miller, just an absolute beauty, an absolute beast out there. This guy 5 years ago was a second line left winger, and now he's a 100-point first line shutdown centerman, bangs bodies. He does it all. The Canucks are exciting again. The Canucks are sexy again, and I'm here for it, man.
Yeah, and I tell you, because I talked about this from previewing of last year, and myself, I've been a long time, Vegas native since 28 years, and now I live comfortably in Denver. I'm in Abs territory, unfortunately, but you know what? I still rep my roots. But the thing is, I talked about it when it came to the coaching hires and the fits, because last year we had Bruce Cassidy, we had Paul Maurice, and we had Pete DeBoer. Every one of them, they fit their identity. Bruce Cassidy was a kind that he pushed a lot of his youngsters and yet was able to get the best out of the veterans. Paul Maurice, you come in from an experience where you had an elite goaltender in Connor Hellebuck, then you get Sergei Bobrovsky, and yet they figured out a lot of their offensive needs that I felt like they needed last season. That was what was going to help them to get over the top. And then there's Pete DeBoer, defensive mentality. And in a better place like Dallas, Texas, where it's all defense from there, and they go and get Chris Tanev, they're stopping shots, they're sacrificing their bodies, and then Jake Ottinger's playing out of his mind. So when I look at Rick Tocchet, and when I start looking at the quick pace, you know what they feel like to me? They felt a lot like the Indiana Pacers, because they are transitioning very quickly. They're passing very efficiently than I'd anticipated, because I thought Carolina was mostly the team that did that well. But they did so many things right that I just am like, Rick Tocchet really blew it out of the ballpark this year. Your thoughts on just the coach's season?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head, and I'll bring up another joke that we kept throwing out on the Lockdown Canucks podcast. We kept saying last year the Canucks chose Rick Tocchet over Connor Bedard. Now, obviously, that's a bit tongue-in-cheek, right? But, back in January of last year when they canned Bruce Boudreau, most fans in this market, myself included, are saying, why are you making this change now? Why don't you just ride out the season, get the worst lottery pick possible, and try to land a potentially generational player? The Canucks said F you to the fans, hired Rick Tocchet anyways, and it ended up being, one of the best decisions this franchise has made over the last couple of years. Fans in Vancouver know this has been a team that for pretty much a decade straight have failed to play good defensive hockey. And that is the number one thing that Rick Tocchet has done with the Vancouver Canucks. We saw in the postseason, they don't mind allowing some shots, but they really do an amazing job of not allowing the high danger chances, not allowing the shots from like that home plate area in the middle of the ice. Man, oh man, you look at some of the guys in this defense, like Tyler Myers is a great example. Big 6'8", very noticeable out there because he's a big dude, but he was brutal in Vancouver for most of his tenure. And man, oh man, this coaching staff, that might be one of the biggest miracles on the team, that they turned Tyler Myers from this chaotic train wreck into actually a respectable defenseman this year. But that's the main thing in Vancouver. I think the forwards know how to defend better. The defense certainly does a better job of, closing out that home plate area in the ice. And I think he just has guys motivated and playing for each other. I think Rick Tocchet, I mentioned JT Miller as well. I think Rick Tocchet was so good for JT Miller in his game. And, I think Rick Tocchet could probably see some of himself in JT Miller, right? A guy who's just not afraid of the dirty areas, who's got some offensive skill, who bangs bodies, who knows how to play a 200-foot game. Rick Tocchet really brought the best out of JT Miller. I think he motivated Quinn Hughes. And again, he got that whole defense playing, borderline elite, to be honest with you. So, yeah, really amazed at the job that Rick Tocchet done. And, again, there's been 3 Coach of the Year winners in Canucks history. For my money, Rick Tocchet did the best job of those 3. And it was, Pat Quinn in the 90s and Alain Vigneault in 06-07. But Rick Tocchet did it without really changing much on this team, right? Look at this team from last year. It was largely the same team aside from, adding some secondary pieces, and guys provided value like the Ian Cole, Teddy Blueger, Carson Soucy, but there are no major changes to the Canucks. This was Rick Tocchet coming in and making this team way better than they were with largely the same roster, or at least the same core.
Yeah, because it was a lot of question marks at the end of it because, like we mentioned, the Brock Besser sweepstakes, was that going to be a real thing? It turns out that basically got turned down. Now, I think the only subtraction was, of course, Bo Horvat. The fact of moving on from a player like that, but yet still keeping the amount of the core, but then bringing in some added new pieces that I felt like were locker room guys. These were guys that were very veteran experienced, that these were guys that were kind of keeping everybody level-headed. Because I'll be honest with you, I was very skeptical of this team when it came into the playoffs, because I was the kind of, you're getting red hot early. My question is, when you hit a cold spot, because that always worries me sometimes with teams. But I felt like they did the opposite. They got better up at it, but in the end, because the thing that questioned me, Thatcher Demko's injury. And so I was like, oh no, how are they going to figure this out? But then in the end, they proved me wrong. They actually were able to stay calm. They were able to stay poised, and they played the way Canucks hockey was meant to be played. So overcoming a lot of those adversities, and especially walking into potentially next season, because I think you and I both know how the Pacific right now has been shaped. It's offensively aggressive. It's another one that they are willing to go toe-to-toe, pound for pound on each end. But hopefully if Edmonton can figure out that goaltending situation, but it's like we kind of have a clear note what we're looking at when it comes to the competition in the Pacific, right?
Yeah, I think so. And yeah, we'll see what next season brings. But yeah, you look at the Pacific, I'm not sure if Seattle, Calgary, Anaheim, and San Jose, if any of those teams are taking a massive leap. But to your point, it's Vancouver, LA, Vegas, and Edmonton. There's a lot of offensive skill. There's a lot of good defensive play. I think all those teams are, pretty good at playing defense, right? Rick Tocchet talked a lot last year about Vegas's defense and how he wanted to kind of model the Canucks defense to be more like Vegas. And look what the Canucks did. They brought in some sides with Ian Cole. They signed Carson Soucy. They trade for Nikita Zadorov. Like, this is a big, mean defense outside of, that top pairing of Hughes and Hronek. But even then, Philip Hronek, we made the joke early in the season, Kyle and I on Locked On Canucks, he might be the second best defenseman in Canucks history. It's been a sad state of affairs in Vancouver for way too long. But man, oh man, Philip Hronek did bring his own element, and yeah, he tailed off. But I think he's good at winning those board battles as well. But yeah, the Pacific is a crazy division, right? And yeah, it's really a top 4, bottom 4. And man, oh man, I got to say though, I was really hoping that the Vancouver Canucks drew the Vegas Golden Knights in round 1. And I know most guys in Vancouver are saying, oh, you got to play Nashville. It's the easy opponent. But I'm all for fun, man. I'm all for stories. And Vegas and Vancouver would have been a ton of fun. But hey, maybe next year, man.
Yeah, and I've said it. I was just like, if I was the Golden Knights, and I quickly pointed that out. I was like, I'm not facing Dallas that first round, because knowing how they loaded defensively, they look at hyper-aggressive scoring teams from Vegas to Colorado to even, Vancouver, a lot of teams that knew how to score. As long as you've got guys that are sacrificing their bodies to stop the puck and help out the goaltending, that's where a lot of that, you're putting your foot on the gas pedal and it ain't going through. That's going to be a lot harder to even have to try to figure out every time with this position. So moving from Jacob Markstrom to Thatcher Demko, when you evaluate how he has managed his play, I mean, the guy's been playing with his hair on fire, and I feel like he's in the right spot where he could very much be something special as a netminder, because it's very rare when you get teams that figure that out. I mean, Vegas last year, Adin Hill was playing out of his mind. And then you had, I love Connor Hellebuck, but this was a disaster this whole postseason. And then I don't know. I'm kind of still questionable about, Georgie in the end. But when you look at Demko, I mean, there's got to be a lot of real good positive hopes and for what the Canucks can really build upon that.
I've been such a big believer of Thatcher Demko for a long time. Really from the moment he's been drafted, he did everything you would have wanted as a prospect, right? He won in the NCAA, great progression in the AHL. The guy's a psychology major which I think is big for a goalie. Like we've seen some hot-headed goalies too. Like credit to Jacob Markstrom, he was a great goalie, but early on in Vancouver, he always seemed to let in an early goal and then go like and get all angry, right? You want a guy who's calm, cool, and collected in net. And I think both Demko and Archer Shilovs as well, as people are learning, are both those kind of guys. And not much rattles Demko. And man, oh man, I think his positioning is great. He makes some crazy saves in big moments. Look, for my money, he was obviously the second best goalie in the league this season. He's one of the best goalies on the planet. I don't think if Thatcher Demko is going to the playoffs and me being worried about like, oh, is he going to collapse? Like obviously goalies have bad games, but you couldn't be more solid in net than you can with a guy like Thatcher Demko. One of the best goalies in the world. So, I mean, the Canucks, again, for a long time throughout Canucks history, I know our old general manager, Brian Burke, said about 20 years ago, like, oh, the Vancouver's a goalie graveyard. Like, our own GM said that, right? But really over the past, ever since Roberto Luongo came in the 2000s, it really hasn't been, right?
Yeah.
Look at Roberto Luongo, Corey Schneider, even during the bad years, like Miller and Locke played pretty well. Jacob Markstrom got a lot better. Thatcher Demko, he's just been unreal since he got here. And then Archer Shilovs, the 23-year-old Latvian comes out of nowhere, and he was great for Vancouver in the postseason. I mean, man, this guy's 23 going on 43. I think most people don't know this guy got married at 18 years old. So I think he's got maturity beyond his years, man. So, yeah, just a couple calm, cool, collected guys in the net. And when, again, it's that old adage, defense wins championships, right? And when you got a great goaltending tandem, you got a great defense, and a lot to be said there about the Canucks because a lot of free agents, a lot could change with the defense going into next season. But when you got that great defense and great goaltending, like the Dallas Stars have right now, as you mentioned, it's a recipe for success for sure.
Yeah, and and that's the one thing. Like that's what makes it. That's what separates the good teams from the great teams. And we've had a lot of them. We've had a lot of really great teams that have caught on fire, and they basically went on a spectacular run. So to building to this point, as we're in the conference championships right now, there's only one Canadian team left. Now, as somebody who represents for a Canadian team, 1993 was the last time that a championship was ever won in the region of Canada. It is so hard to really try to come up with the explanation of what has been happening with Canadian teams over the last 30 plus years. I've never found an answer for it, but I feel like because the competition's gotten better, I feel like many U.S. teams that are out there, U.S. base teams, yes, they are getting a lot of foreign players, but even so, the connection, the camaraderie, everything, the chemistry just starts to come together. But it's like Montreal's just going through a whole dumpster fire. Same with Calgary. But then when you look at Edmonton, Vancouver, and I mean, what a disappointment for Winnipeg. I had them potentially be that competitive team, maybe not make to the final, but something competitive. But I mean, this has got to, at some point, this has got to get snapped at some point, right? Like, what, in your thoughts covering a Canadian team, what has been the missing link with this?
Yeah, this is a boring answer, but I do think it's partly luck based, right? Now you look, there's 7 Canadian teams now and 25 other teams in the NHL. So part of it's law of averages, right? There's been 31 years without a cup, but there's again, 32 teams that can win, right? So, and in that time too, like Vancouver's made the finals twice, Edmonton's been there, Calgary's been there, Montreal's been there, Ottawa's been there. Really, everyone except Toronto, Winnipeg has at least been to the finals, but they just haven't won. Now, there's the argument too that there's more pressure playing in the Canadian market, and I think there's something to be said about that, right? Like, for each one of the teams in Canada, like hockey, the NHL team is the number one attraction by far. Even in a city like Toronto, where you got like the Blue Jays and the Raptors, it's the Leafs for sure are the top ticket in town. So there's more pressure playing in the Canadian market, but I do think a lot of it is luck based, right? And there's just been some bad mismanagement among Canadian teams, right? Like Edmonton had a decade after they won the Cup final in 06 where Peter Chiarelli and Craig McTavish wrecked that team. The Canucks were ruined by Jim Benning. Pierre Dorion was a disaster in Ottawa. The Leafs were wrecked by, oh God, you can't remember who it was at the time. But anyways, I mean, it's just been a lot of bad mismanagement in Canada among general managers. And, it's, again, luck plays into it, but you got to have good management, right? It starts at the top. And if you have GMs trying to cut corners, making trades that are going to be detrimental to your team, I mean, in Vancouver, for instance, right? For fans that don't know, it's the Canucks tried to do this retool on the fly forever, and they were bad for a decade because of it. And it made no sense. Every fan of this market knew it didn't make sense. But lo and behold, the Canucks management just went and did what they wanted anyways, overpaid for all these fourth line guys. So again, that happened for the majority of Canadian teams at least once for a stretch over the past 30 years. So, I mean, the streak's got to break eventually. But I'll also say this, Jake. Sometimes Americans are like, oh, I'm sure Canadians just cheer for any other Canadian team to win the cup. That's not true in the slightest. I do not want Edmonton to win the Stanley Cup. I do not want to see the Canucks rival go lift the Stanley Cup. I'm cheering for probably everybody else except the Edmonton Oilers to win. F that. I mean, yeah. Connor McDavid winning for the league. I'm sure that would be good, right? The best player to win the title. I don't want to see it, okay? I tell all my Edmonton friends, all my Oilers fans, I hate your team and I hope you lose.
I'll tell you one thing, man. I mean, you may not be. I mean, I thought Calgary was the only fire brewing when it came to the Battle of Alberta. And apparently now, like, we got Canucks fans that are feeling the same way. So it's like, yeah, I mean, yeah. Eventually, this will be the moment for at least for the region of Canada to at least have a championship. But hopefully, we'll see. I mean, anyone that's worthy of putting together that right group, that right squad, and when you got the right people in the right places, then that's when everything else flourishes. So a side note before letting you go. So now we got hockey in Utah. And I was kind of looking at like, why haven't we had hockey in Utah sooner? Now, nothing to take away from the desert of Arizona. I used to love watching, like, they were the very first of hockey in the desert. They experimented in that. Now, I felt bad for Arizona fans because, first of all, why am I playing in a collegiate arena where it's like these players just feel like they're playing college hockey every night? And look, living in Denver, I've got cold weather. I've got beautiful weather. It's maintainable, especially when you look at the ice. So when I look at Utah, because I camped there multiple times, the weather's great. You get snowstorms in the end, but it's maintainable and manageable. And from what I've been told, the Jazz owners are so like invested when it comes to the teams. So now having this team in Utah, how do you really see this play out? And could this potentially work in this market?
I think it could work because, we talked about it a bit, but it starts with good management, right? And like you said, I think Ryan Smith, the Utah Jazz owner, now the Utah Hockey Club owner, the Utah Sasquatches or whatever the hell they're going to call them. I think there's a chance for success there, right? Because it sounds like, Ryan Smith has invested a lot into the Jazz. He's been a very progressive owner. I know hasn't really, helped the Jazz into a ton of success, but it sounds like, again, from everything you hear from Utah and reporters in that market, that he's done everything possible to put that team in the right direction. That never happened in Arizona for the 25 or 30 years that they were in the desert. It seemed to get worse and worse with every owner that was in charge, and ending with the fiasco of Gutierrez there. So, I mean, you got to have good ownership in charge at the end of the day. I mean, when I'm not going to pretend to know a lot about the Utah market. I would love to visit Utah, man. Go give me your Utah travel tips after this. I'm a big road trip guy. I just went on a road trip. I just went down on a road trip to the States actually with my family earlier this month. So anyways, man, love to get down to Utah, but it's an interesting market just based on the demographics there. And, even reporters have talked about it, like, the amount of fundamentalists and Mormons there. It's a very different market from everything else in the States, but we've seen in Utah it can work, and Utah seems like a beautiful city. They love their snow. They love their outdoor sports. I think if you have good ownership in place, and again, what the NHL has done a good job of, and not that anyone really wants to give Gary Bettman credit, is, what he's done with the expansion drafts and valuations. It seems like every team can be competitive in the NHL, and the NHL has pushed parity for a long time. And I know Utah's inheriting an Arizona team that hasn't been very good, but they got one of the best prospect pools in the league. There's a chance this team can make some noise. They made some noise in the first half of last season before everything fell apart. But hey, like you said, they're playing in a 5,000 seat arena. I like to see what that team can do in a full stadium with new jerseys and a fresh start. Like I think hockey can work in Utah, but we'll see how it goes. They are in the Canucks. Actually, no, they moved out of the Canucks division, but I'll be rooting for Utah unless the Canucks team in the playoffs. How about that?
Yeah, that's fair enough. But I'll tell you what, though, hopefully I won't get this narrative that if we got a team in Utah that they're basically be like, they're manipulating the LTIR. I'm like, come on, stop it. So was 16 other teams that have basically done the same thing. Do better. Like, but yeah, I mean, like my experiences being in Utah, I've been to Cedar City. I've been to St. George. Camping wise, I've been to Duck Creek. I've been to Panguitch. It's a lot of outdoor, like there's nothing you can't do outdoors, from the camping to the fishing to like the hunting. I do all of it. And having a piece of land, at least in the place where, hey, if I end up getting a cabin, I'm Airbnb-ing that thing. And I'll end up, visiting 7-8 times a year. And then at that point, I'm getting my money's worth that's going to come back to my mortgage and make it well worth it. Such a travel destination. And they've got good food too. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of real good restaurant recommendations up over there, man. It's a great visit. You'll love it from there. Trevor, appreciate you for taking the time coming up on here talking to Canucks. Where can people find you and getting locked on those Vancouver Canucks?
It's been a pleasure chatting with you, Jake the Snake. Let's go, buddy. You can find me on Twitter at TrevBeggs. You can also find Locked On Canucks wherever you listen to podcasts and on YouTube. I guess I also go to Instagram as well at Trev Beggsy, but I would say, first and foremost, I get paid if you go subscribe to the podcast, listen to Locked On Canucks. Again, it's the off season, but we're having fun every damn day. Again, man, just trying to make some magic happen, much like you are here on this show. Thanks for having me, bud.
Absolutely, man. Take care of yourself. Enjoy the rest of the weekend, man, and we'll see you up on the other side and see what the Canucks do this off season. Take care, my man.
Thank you, sir.
Absolutely. I mean, I've had such a soft spot for hockey now. Like, I mean, look, I have repped the Vegas Golden Knights, and I will continue to rep them till the day I die. I mean, as a longtime Vegas native, I love this sport because in the end, I love football. I love my baseball. I love my history. But there's just something about hockey that not a lot of people really do pay attention to. And I'm just so appreciated for the fact that we get this. Like, we have this. And so I'm excited. I think a lot of people, when it comes to hockey, especially in the Stanley Cup playoffs, they're excited as well. And so, but man, got a lot of great content. Absolutely loved it. What a blast. Appreciate all these guys that came up on here. Man, we had an absolute heck of a week. Like, seriously, a heck of a week, guys. I've been so happy with the outcome on the show. But I appreciate everybody who has come on here up onto the show as we are up for the rest of the weekend. Snake Sports Talk Show is sponsored by BetUS and SeatGeek. Special shout out to Mo Murphy and Believe Mavs, and special shout out to Trevor Beggs on Locked On Canucks. They definitely made it well worth the time here on the Snake Sports Talk Show. When you go online to BetUS.com, when you put $50 down or more on your first deposit, you'll get 200% in bonuses and 30 risk-free bets. Just as a way of saying thank you for joining the best betting sports app for over 30 years. BetUS, where the game begins as the lines are getting stronger and stronger. We got the NBA Finals lines that are coming up. Stanley Cup playoffs still continuing on, and then Major League Baseball action as well. I will have next week, I got more potential guests up on the show, but I will have my over-unders of the NFL teams to give a little more clarity into the season. Sponsored by SeatGeek as well. Don't lose your seat and get the best seat at the most affordable price with SeatGeek.com. Download it on your mobile device through Google Play in the App Store and use promo code SNAKESPORTS for $20 off of your purchase before checkout of your very first ticket. Jake the Snake signing off here Have a great rest of your weekend. Enjoy it. I know I am. Now, we'll see you guys next week on the Snake Sports Talk Show. See you later, guys.